I want to share with you a story that I saw this week that was shared with me. A story that happened in Israel. And it's on Chabad.org. And it really inspired me. I thought, okay, this is a good way to start this week. So this is a wedding that just happened that you can't see, printed in black and white, of a couple called Elisha and Naomi Schlesinger. Sounds Jewish to you? So they live in Israel, and this guy Elisha is 28 years old, and he was traveling to his family in the north of Israel. They were on vacation, and he went up to north of Israel, and he was driving there, and he kept prolonging the fact that he needed to refuel his car. It's a 3-hour drive. He was going up north, 3-hour drive, and an hour before he arrives at his spot, he sees that, okay, I've got to just stop. He stops at a gas station, and this guy Elisha is filling up his gas in his car. He sees he's 3 hours till Shabbat, and it's only an hour left of driving. Everything's great. He fills his car, and as he's about to get out, he sees a lady that's distressed. She's under a lot of stress, and he sees that something's wrong. She's got kids in the back, and she's nervous. So he asks her what's going on, and she says to him, I don't know what to do. My car, I filled it with diesel, and the car now won't work, and I need to get professional help. Till the professional help comes, it's not going to happen. It's going to take time, and I need to get all the way down back to the south of Israel. So this guy Elisha says, no problem. I know exactly. You've got 3 hours. You've got enough time here. Take my keys. This is my car, and just go. Just take my car. I just filled up the gas. She's like, what? You crazy? It's like, no problem. After Shabbat, we'll be in touch. Take my number. After Shabbat, and I'll come and get my car back. But you go with your family. So that's exactly what she does. She puts her kids in. She's shocked. She puts the kids in his car, takes the keys, and takes it all the way down south, and is amazed. After Shabbat, she has his number. She calls Elisha, and she tells him, you are incredible. I need to speak to your mom. She speaks to his mom, and his mom, she says, I've never heard of someone so kind and generous and so special. I don't know what you do. What is your secret? It's a mom talk. And she's like, yeah, no, that part I added. So anyway, basically, the story is that she says, what can I do for you? This lady, she says, what can I do for your family? Is there anything I can do? She says, there's nothing you can do, but my son Elisha would like to get married at some point. So if you have a nice girl. So she says, okay, I'll help him. And she posts on her Facebook. Here's how Facebook comes to use finally. She posts on her Facebook the whole story. And then she says, this guy deserves someone really special. And the post gets kind of viral. And she gets one of the first people that was suggested on the post, tagged, they tagged her name, was this girl called Naomi. And she sets them up, Naomi with Elisha. She says, hey, there's this great girl. She's around your same age. You guys should go out. They go out and they get married. And this is the picture of their wedding that just happened recently. So I'll let you see this afterwards. But it's an amazing story, and it tells me a few things. Number one, the greatness of first of all, it just gives you a feel of what Israel's all about. It's like a little Israel taster. But what talks to me so much about this story is a number of things. First of all, the trust. The greatness is not just in the guy, it's also in the person that he's standing in front of. Because he had a certain sense of trust in her, that he could just trust her with his car, So in my eyes, that's a beautiful thing. So that's one of the things that I see that is beautiful. Also, just this guy, amazing. So I think that also what's amazing is that when you give, so you think, okay, what am I doing? I'm losing, or in some way. But from our perspective, la briut. From our perspective, I was getting nervous. So from our perspective, we care. We see that in a Jewish world, in the way that we look at things from a spiritual lens, when you give, you don't lose, you actually gain. And there's like a real trust in that. There's a belief in that within our people, that when we give, we don't lose, we gain. It's like almost crazy. It's the exact opposite of what you would think. You would think by giving, you lose money. But really, when giving, there's an energy that comes back your way, and you gain from it. So that's really the beauty of this story. And I wanted to...
There's no such thing as altruism.
Huh?
So there's no such thing as altruism.
Yeah. So, but that's... yeah, look, whatever. So...
Conversation for
another time. But look, what I see in this story is that you definitely don't lose by giving. And this guy is a perfect example of that. Okay, so we are studying something which is kind of on the lines of this discussion. And I want to get into it and touch on some very nice ideas. We are weekly studying Pirkei Avot. So I'm not sure if you know about Pirkei Avot, but it's a great book. It needs to be studied and learnt and thought about and asked lots of questions on it. But let's go through some of the Pirkei Avot that we've been studying till now. We're in the second chapter. I'm in the section number 11. And he says like this, and before I say it, I want to ask, what is it besides for biologically, okay, biologically there are in our genes, in our body, there's cells which are told to age. We actually, from the day that we're born, conceived, there are cells called the aging cells, which actually tells my body to age, which is very, very interesting. But besides for biologically, what is it that makes us age? Meaning, from a spiritual perspective, we age because of the food we eat, right? That can have an effect on our health, and therefore make us age a little bit more every time that we eat the wrong thing. Huh?
Free radicals.
What do you mean?
Like you need vitamin C or this
right.
antioxidant to...
Yes.
Free radical.
By the way, from a Jewish perspective, it says that what was the sin of Adam? Food. Okay, it was with food that he made the mistake with. And it was because of that he was told that death will be introduced to you. Meaning that before whatever it was, but according to Jewish teaching, before he ate from that tree, he was able to eat perfectly. The food that he was eating was perfect, meaning that according to our tradition, if we were able to eat exactly the right nutrition at the right times, we would have a much longer living span. If we would know exactly what nutrition our body needs at every second, exactly when and when not to eat and what to avoid, but we are very confused in terms of what we, sometimes people go on the protein craze and then they go on the keto craze, so we all know that too much of anything is not good for us. And then some people are scooping powders, and feel the gains. So there's a lot of this mentality of, okay, this works, so let's take a lot of that. But actually, everybody's different. Everybody needs a different amount. And if it was measured in the correct way, we'd be able to live much longer. That's actually one of our traditional teachings, written by a great teacher, the Chovot HaLevavot. Anyway, but so what is it that makes us age from a spiritual perspective? Physically, biologically, we know there are things that make us age that's not in our control. But there are things that make us age a little bit more every time. And I say this all the time. You can go to the gym, you'll see a guy who's healthy, or at least looks healthy, or a girl that looks healthy on the outside. The six-pack is there, or whatever it is, and the muscles are there, and you're like, wow, this guy looks so healthy. But inside, they could be very unhealthy. It doesn't the external is not necessarily an indicator of the internal. We can have somebody who has a great looking body and mentally they're just not stable. So there are other aspects of life than just how we are perceived on the outside. We forget that sometimes. But it's not just about how people look at us from the outside. It's also how we really are on the inside. In fact, we believe much more is it about how you are on the inside than how you look on the outside. You know, it's six-pack, and then the guy after the gym, he's going out for a bunch of smokes. You know, it's kind of a contradiction. It's a paradox. But that's how we are as humans anyway. It's like right now there's a war going on, and you see whilst the war's going on, people are wearing masks. You know, like you care about life so much that you believe that everyone should be wearing masks because we might be getting sick and we might be spreading COVID, but then you're also shooting people. Yeah, that's kind of a paradox. So it's just something to think about how, you know, we live a very confusing life sometimes. In some ways, we're very strong about some things, and then in other ways, we'll say, okay, that doesn't matter. It's like a person who has pizza and then says, hey, can you give me Diet Coke? You know, it's like, hello, what? You're eating that thick cheese pizza, kosher one, right? So and then you're having that Diet Coke. Okay, that makes you feel a little better, you know, but it doesn't mean that it is better. So externalities doesn't necessarily indicate what's going on inside, true? So what is it that makes us age? From a spiritual perspective, what is it that makes us become old? Sorry? Trauma. What kind of trauma?
Well, it can extend.
Okay, something that externally happens to you. I would say trauma might not even be something within your control.
It doesn't necessarily have to be external. It could also be internal. It could come from a type of abuse, being emotional, you know.
For sure.
I mean, there could be types of physical abuse that relate to the emotional abuse, but, you know, I think the majority of the trauma that comes with a lot of people growing up too quickly is being able to take on the responsibility and trying to move forward with accepting that trauma that they just endured.
Okay, dealing with trauma is a very good example of something that can make us mentally challenged and age, yes, if we're not able to deal with it correctly. Yeah.
I would say cynicism.
Okay, yes. Well, we're getting somewhere. Yes. Cynicism is definitely something that can make us feel not good and therefore slowly eat ourselves up, you know, eat ourselves away. Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah.
I think routine, like things aren't as new after a while.
Okay, getting used to the same old. You're like, okay, what the heck's the point of this life anyway? And, you know, you start aging from it, okay? Not finding meaning in your daily routine. Yeah.
This is kind of a cop-out answer, but let me explain.
Okay, time.
Time, because not just with the passage of time do we age and do we live, because that is just how relativity works, but the experiences you gain. The fact that over time you will have routine, you will experience trauma, you will see what cynicism is, you will learn how to overcome it, you will heal, you will become the person that you were either meant to be or are trying to be with time.
Right, so it's interesting because time can heal, but time also allows the idea of aging, like you're saying. So, yeah, that is true. I would say that, you know, there are people that come from very affluent, very successful, very ideal homes that we all would want to be from, and they don't have trauma. And yet, in those places sometimes, with all their wealth and comfort, they can be challenged mentally. It's very interesting that happens.
Because it isn't being that.
Right? So there's something outside of trauma that can also cause us to age, right? Right? My need, I'm not feeling fulfilled. Fulfillment is a very important thing. Also in my work, in order to overcome that routine, to feel that I'm fulfilled in what I'm doing, appreciated for what I'm doing, which ties into cynicism, is also very important. Okay, I want to say to you, these are all very, very important points, and I want to go into the three underlying points that they bring here in the name of Rabbi Yeshua in this Mishnah in the second chapter, number 11. Okay, he says like this. Rabbi Yeshua says, Ayin hara, a bad eye, close to cynicism, we'll see what that means, and a yetzer hara, the inclination to do bad, and hatred of all creations, is what takes a person out of this world. Again, ayin hara, a bad eye, we'll discuss what that means. Yetzer hara, a bad inclination, the inclination in me that says, do something which I don't really want to do, like sleep in. Laziness is an example of a bad inclination. Okay, there are things that we have in us that are good, but then we also have inclinations to do bad. We could talk about that too, because I've had a discussion with somebody just this week who says, I don't think anyone has an inclination to do good or bad. We don't have free will. If you do good, it's because something inside you told you to do it. And if you do bad, there's something inside you or conditioning that you've had which told you to do it. It's the question of free will. That's another whole discussion. I've given a class on that in the past. But he says, inclination to do bad and hatred for others is what takes us out of this world. So I want to talk about these three things. Now, when it says ayin hara, it does not mean like, the chamsa that we have, that people put. That's actually not so much a Jewish tradition as much. It's become a thing because of the concept of ayin hara. It's like a hand stopping the eye. It's got an eye in it. And that is this idea. That's not what we're talking about here. But there is a Talmud like this. It says like this in the Talmud, in Psachim, in the Talmud, the tractate of Passover, which is coming up. It says like this: a person should not stand at a field of his friend at the time that it's just before harvest. So, when the field's really thriving and it's growing, blossoming, everything's coming out, and this guy owns this field, if you're walking past, don't just stand there watching it. Don't watch it. Because there's a certain radiation that your eyes can give, and that can ruin his field just by looking at it. So you could say, oh, very nice, it looks beautiful, or give somebody a compliment, of course. But when someone is at his height, so what happens is we look and we say, oh, wow, he's going to make a lot of money this year. Ooh, business is going well for this person. And we're told that we should avoid looking at him at that moment because we'll cause what we call an ayin hara, an evil eye. Even if I'm not jealous of him, just by looking, there's a certain energy that I'm putting on it, and that's not a good energy. It says in the Talmud, even though there's such a thing, a person shouldn't be filled with anxiety of ayin hara. It says, Kol de kapid, kapdei bahadei. Those that are worried about it, then it can affect them. And if you're not worried about it, it won't affect you. However, we should be suspicious of it. It's very confusing. He says, those that are worried about it, it can affect them. If you're not worried about it, it won't affect you. But you should be suspicious of it. Meaning that if you, let's say, are doing very well and you already have 3 beautiful cars and you decide to buy another one or change one for another. At that moment, you already are a person that's living in that kind of trajectory, in that path. So if somebody sees you, it's not going to have as much of an effect as somebody, let's say, who wins the lottery. And all of a sudden, the money comes flying in his account. And all of a sudden, beautiful house, a gorgeous car, whoa, it's going to cause everyone to look. And that energy of people looking is what we call ayin hara. So all of that stuff, our rabbis say that if you're worried about it, it can affect you. If you're not worried about it, it won't affect you. Why? Because I'm here in this world, I'm here to live. And if God wants me to be successful, then I will be. And I'm here to do well. And doesn't God want me to do well? So why should I be worried? And if somebody's not worried, it won't affect him because what am I doing wrong? But when it does get dangerous is when we're doing things that are not right with the things that we have. For instance, standing next to people that are very poor and being seen as someone who's flashing or over flashing when you're in a surrounding where people in that situation are suffering. And here you come with your gorgeous mansion and car, so it causes that eye to be looking at you. So those are certain times. There are certain times where a person needs to judge and think. Like it says with Jacob, there was a famine in Israel, and his sons were with him, and they had a beautiful field and cattle. They had they were not worried. But the country that they were living in, which was Canaan at the time, Eretz Canaan, the country that they were living in, there was a famine. They weren't worried. They stocked up. They had a lot of stuff. They had a lot of animals. They had a lot of flock. They had a lot of food. Jacob's family was fine. But in the land that they were living, there was everyone was starving. So what did Jacob say? He says to his sons, Lama titra'u. It's not good that we should be seen as different. It's not good when everyone's suffering that we're seen with all this success. So what they did was they went with everyone else to Egypt and they bought food just like everyone else did, even though they had. So that they shouldn't be feeling or seen, they shouldn't be looked at in any way as different. It's a wisdom to have, to not cause people to look at you for irrelevant reasons or for things that are not going to benefit you. And those eyes can be is somewhat damaging. Okay, so, but again, it says that somebody who is not concerned about it, it doesn't affect him. But that's not what it's talking about here. When he says ayin hara, it's talking about somebody who has a narrow eye, which means that you can't see the success of somebody else. That's what it's talking about here. Ayin hara comes from the word sarat ayin. Your eye hurts when you see somebody else who's successful. Let's say you buy a house and you have a job and you're making an income and finally you get a house. Oh, would you be happy? Of course, you live in it, you make it look nice, it looks beautiful. It's one floor, beautiful house. All of a sudden, opposite you, on the other side of the street, someone knocks down 2 houses, and he's doing construction over there, and you're, wow, who is this? And he's building 3 stories, beautiful pool, and you're watching the whole process because you live opposite. Every day you see the pool being built, you see the 3-story building, wow. And you're looking from across, who is this guy that's the audacity to build a nicer house than me? Who is it? And not only do you find out who it is, it's your friend that you grew up with in school. He was way below you in the grades that you got. You were way smarter than him and way more successful. And he is your friend from school that opposite the road bought that lot and is building that mansion. Somebody with sarat ayin, somebody with the ayin hara inside himself, with a bad eye, suddenly he had a beautiful house. He has a nice house. He has a nice car, a job. Many people don't have that. But because of sarat ayin, because of that narrow eye looking at the other side of the street, the house that he has now starts becoming worthless. I'm taken over almost by the vision of somebody else's success to a point where my success is irrelevant. This, by the way, is the great danger of social media. I'm a big fan of social media. Aislit's all over it. Okay, we are all over social media. That's how most people are here today. But one of the big dangers, is that I'm allowing myself to see what appears to be even. Sometimes it's not, and it's not. But it appears to be the success of everybody else, and it slowly bites away my success that I've been given in my life, my health, my family, all the good things that happen to me, starts getting chewed away at. And what happens is, I forget the good I have, and that starts eating at me, and slowly, that's one of the things it says. Throughout my lifetime, the effect of my social surrounding has an effect on my life as I live right now. how I feel about myself. And that, in a way, is one of the things that causes a person to leave the world. Even whilst he's living, it makes him leave the world. Because the world that he's in, or she's in, is not relevant, because that person's house is what's mattering to me right now. And my success is irrelevant. Yeah, well, you were going to ask something?
I was going to say, isn't that like jealousy in a sense?
It is a type of jealousy.
It's a type of jealousy?
Yes,
Or
it's jealousy.
because you're just comparing your life to somebody else and you not living up to what you thought was your higher expectation, and you see someone else doing that higher expectation that you thought for yourself.
Exactly.
So
Exactly, it's a jealousy. And you should know, jealousy is a trait. It's a personality that you have. Ayin hara, having a tzarat ayin, a bad eye on someone, is the act of doing it. Right? It's the act of jealousy. I am jealous, but how is that happening? It's shown in the way that I have a painful eye. I can't bear to look at the success of someone else. It hurts me to see their success. So the question is, how do we fix that? Because that's something that happens to us throughout our lifetime. You can have a lot and it could be worthless because of someone else that's similar, in a similar life to you. And it bothers you that their success is so much better than yours. It can happen, by the way, in a relationship. In a relationship, it can happen also, where you see the success of the other side and it bothers you. So how do we get into a relationship and be happy for the success of the other? Well, that's called a tov ayin, right? Have a good eye. We've been speaking a lot about tov ayin, ayin ra'ah, having a good eye at people versus having a bad eye at people, or what we call tzarat ayin. And the question is, how do you have a good eye? That's the question. So I wrote down a number of points. Anyone think of ways that we can improve this illness, let's say, that affects us and eats us away throughout our lifetime? By the way, it's very subtle and very subconscious throughout our lifetime. But it happens, it goes in, it eats at us. And the question is, how can we fight this battle? Yes, anyone, go for it. Whoever wants. Yeah. Gratitude, being thankful for what you have in your life, so that even though the person opposite the road, right, is successful, it doesn't bother me. I'm happy for what I have, and I'm grateful, and that's important. Yes? Anyone else? Yeah.
Just focus on yourself.
Okay, focus on yourself. Stop looking at them.
Growth.
Right? Self-growth, self-happiness, self-success.
Insecurity, like that's the main.
Right, that's what she's saying, right? You're saying security. Right. Right. Insecurity. So that's what you're saying. Make yourself more secure with who you are,
Yeah.
so that you
So
can.
whenever someone comes in class and they're smart, you won't get jealous.
Good. That's a good one. Yeah. What did she say? What did she say?
Talk to a therapist.
Okay. Yeah. It's very
Some
important.
people need it.
Yes.
There's no
100%. 100%.
and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's not.
We're in the way.
Not at all. It says, Shlomo HaMelech said, if you have pain in your heart, if you have any form of anguish, you have to speak it out. A therapist is there to listen. I don't know which therapist you go to, or anyone goes to, but if they're not listening and they're talking, you run away. That's it. You need them to listen. Yeah. That's why I will never be a good therapist. I just talk. Yeah.
Acceptance.
Okay, acceptance. Accepting their situation.
Well, multiple things.
Okay.
First, accepting their situation, and second, accepting the fact that you may feel this way, and that this is something that you need to deal with, but trying to make sure that you never feel this way, and pushing the feelings away makes it grow worse.
Yes, that's very true. Embrace the feeling and channel it, or like deal with it, but don't kind of suppress it away inside of you. It's very important. Also, we're going to speak about that in the next thing, which is Yetzer Hara, that Judaism never says suppress a certain feeling. You need to channel it for the right way. We're not into suppressing who we are and hiding our energies. But sometimes our energies are not so good. So we've got to channel them and train them for the right path. But that's really
I also think that
beautiful.
Thought and don't want to have in the first place.
I'll give you an example. Just this week, It's a lot for us with kids and running around. And so sometimes I'm like, oh, this is, I'm so tired. Like I want to sleep 2 o'clock in the morning, someone's crying. And then this week, I was thinking about what's happening, like seeing all these pictures of people in Ukraine where they had to send their kids away on trains. And it's just so, I can't even, as a father, and Shira as a mother, like we've been talking about it, it's just, how can I ever complain ever again? So that's a perfect example of, like how can we complain with our little problems when there are such greater problems out there? So there is a beautiful, it's not that I'm taking advantage. People get...
Sure, that's what I was thinking about. No, I'm not saying you are.
I'm not taking advantage.
I'm trying to think about philosophically. Maybe it is kind of like finding comfort in people's suffering.
But that's the thing. I'm not happy with his suffering. The opposite.
You're not, right.
It's
but you're taking advantage of it also.
No, it's through the pain of their suffering and caring about their suffering. I am looking at my life and saying to myself, physically, I can't help them right now. But those people, if they were watching me, they'll be like, what the heck is wrong with you? Mm-hmm. Why are you complaining? Mm-hmm. You have everything with you right now. These problems are small. They would want me to celebrate my life because that's what they're trying to achieve. So it's not the opposite. I'm in pain for them, but it's because I'm in pain for them that I'm able to recognize where there's more to think about. Actually, from a Jewish perspective, if we believe that there's divine providence, everything you see is for a reason. So if you're walking down the street and suddenly, exactly the hour that you're walking, there was a group of special needs that are walking past you. That's a lesson for you. That is meant to be a lesson for you. Or if you see somebody who's blind, God forbid, and he's walking with a stick and he's trying to cross the road and he has to go like this. Why did you see him at specifically that hour, that minute? 5 minutes ago, you were thinking not to walk. You were thinking to actually take the car. And then you decided you'll walk. And within those 5 minutes, exactly that minute, you stood at the traffic light. And that person, everything's a coincidence. It's not a coincidence. Everything happens for a reason. And you're now standing at that traffic light and you're seeing somebody who's unable to see. That is a lesson for me. Although we are realistic with the reality of the world, there are people that are misfortunate, they're unfortunate, there are people that are suffering, and they themselves have another whole perspective of how they can look at life. But for us, that should empower us to use the things that we have for the better because I am in pain for them. Because I'm in pain, I need to be grateful a little bit more for the good that I have in my life, knowing that how can I ever complain? And that's what they would want me to do. Yeah, so...
I was going to say, let's say, we didn't have social media or the news and we didn't know what was actually happening in Ukraine. Would you have still thought like, oh, are my problems still so small?
No, I wouldn't. And the reason that we're in a generation and a time that social media is so strong and we're able to see all of these things, that is a message for me also. It never used to be like that, where everything is so in front of us. It's unless you bought the newspaper and you saw you wouldn't even see every video and every picture and every graphic detail of what's going on, So the fact that we're in a time where we are seeing everything, so that means there's a message for the world, for every person that sees it. If you see it, there's a message for you. And sometimes the message is go and help if you can. Sometimes the message is do something, be a little kinder. There's a prayer that we say before we pray that we're meant to say, which is that this was written by a big Kabbalist, and he said that when we do it, even though we're here, but our energy can be somewhere else. And what's the prayer that they say? The Arizal says a person should always say before he starts his regular prayers in the morning, he should say, I accept on myself the mitzvah to love my fellow like I love myself. I accept on it. You have to meditate on these words. That I accept on myself today, a new day, and I accept on myself the mitzvah to love. And that would cause an impact on the leaders, on different people. When my energy is in the world, it affects the animals, it affects the air, it affects the atmosphere, it affects humanity as a whole. Decisions that humans make can affect people at many faraway places. So that's what we believe. It's not only about helping financially. There's other things that we can do as human beings that can affect humans in other places. Okay, so one of the things that can eat us alive is the idea of Ayin Hara. And you all gave brilliant ideas. I want to give you some tips that I wrote. Everything you said was beautiful. I'm not saying that I'm saying something more. I'm just saying things that I wrote that you didn't say yet. One of them is, if you see somebody that's successful and you feel a little pain in your heart, go to him and bless him. Even if you don't fully mean it. Okay, go over to him and say, I'm so happy for you. I really hope that you are successful. So nice that you're going to be my neighbor. Even if you don't fully mean it. Because the external has an effect on your internal. When you express something outside, it will actually have an impact on you, how you actually feel on the inside. So you can close your eyes and say, I'm so happy for him. You drive past the other guy that's doing well, I'm so happy for him.
Fake it until you make it.
Fake it till you make it, exactly. There is an idea of fake it till you make it. And by the way, when we do this, we're actually told that the blessing will come back to you. Meaning what you want, the fact that you're blessing him for that 3-story building and the pool, if that's really what you want, you'll get it too.
So you're actually blessing yourself.
You're really blessing yourself. Yes.
Again, no altruism.
No altruism, but that's what's happening.
Well, the blessing in itself, what you're receiving, is the fact that you're wishing well unto others, so you will relinquish that feeling of negativity that you're receiving.
Exactly.
Thinking about it.
Exactly. You're getting rid of that negative feeling and you're bringing on yourself
that good energy. That's the problem that I see a lot of people within religious communities, whatever religion, they think that when you pray for something, you're going to receive it. And then that's their argument for why God doesn't exist. But I believe that the whole act of prayer is building a relationship with God and with other people.
Well, I have a whole discussion on prayer, and it's a whole class that I've given in the past. God doesn't need your prayers. That's the first thing. He's infinite. He knows exactly what you need. And he knows what's best for you already. So how can we pray? There's a whole discussion. If God, according to us, is infinite, all-knowing, all-loving, and all-powerful, he can give whatever he wants. He knows exactly what you want, and he's all good. So then why is he not giving it to you? And how do you have the audacity to pray? Right? That's the question that I once...
does he like to be cherished?
Well, there is a concept of that, and that's that we should get closer to him. There is an idea of that, but mainly, and this is what Rabbi Yosef Albo says, and many other commentaries, mainly the idea is for me to internalize my own growth. When I pray, I reflect on myself. It's for me. I'm really there, through the prayer, it's a process of changing my inner self. That's really what does happen. And when I do change my inner self, I can now be a different vessel, a different person that can receive what I wanted originally, but I wasn't getting it. Okay, so...
That was your cue, I guess.
Okay, so one thing is blessing the person that you see that is successful. Okay, another thing is, everyone kind of touched on this, which is ahavat habriot. We're just talking about later, hatred, working on loving people. How do you love people? No two people are alike. How do you love people a little more? You find what we call in Hebrew, you speak Hebrew, we find nekuda tova. What's that mean? The good spot. You find a good thing about this person. You know the story of the rabbi, he sits in his class, he sees everyone's complaining, puts a little mark on the paper, he says, what do you guys see? You know the story? He says, what do you guys see? So they say, what do you mean, what do we see? A little mark. He says, no, it's a white paper, a very big white paper, and a small little mark in the middle. So it's true that there are certain points about other people that bother us, but we have to find the nekudat tova in people, outside of the neighbor that comes and builds a house right opposite me. In general, what we call ahavat habriot, loving people. And you should know, when somebody around you is successful, it's only going to benefit you. Most times it's only going to be better for you. If he's successful, so then maybe he'll employ you. Maybe he'll employ your friend. Maybe one day he'll employ his success should be a benefit for me. It's not a failure for me.
What if he runs you out of business?
So that's different. There is right.
What if he runs you out of business?
Well, there are situations where people are evil. We don't have to go even to a point where he opens a competing business. Let's say if he comes and he sits outside your house and spray paints your house and does acts of evil. There are things where. Well, according to halakha, it's a good point, by the way. According to Jewish law, a person should not. There's no official law that says you can't open a store right next door to someone else who has the same store. But it's kind of logical, right? It's something which is ethical. That if someone is selling, is the only one that's got a coffee shop on the street. What is the point of you, Starbucks, going and opening a coffee shop next door? So, there are times where it's not about sinah or ahava. I'm talking about the general theme. Well, I'm talking about the general theme of loving people. Okay? If someone's out there to hurt me, then I'm not saying that you should be vulnerable and let them take advantage of you. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the general theme of believing that most people are good. That most people are not out there to hit me in the head. Most people are not, I don't like this theory that everyone's here to take advantage of you and everyone's here to hurt you. The inner belief that most people are good. If I see someone doing something wrong in my face, then I don't think most people are good. There's a certain time where you have to actually understand some people are dangerous and some people are unhealthy. But I'm talking about as an overall theme. When you're alone, are you able to see good in people? And that's something that we need to work on in order to have this thing of not fighting. It says, especially with the Jewish people, Kol Yisrael arevim zeh bazeh. We are all intertwined with each other. Kol Yisrael arevim zeh bazeh. By the way, that's why this guy in this story was able to trust a random person. It wasn't just in any country, but we have the same Torah, the same values. So there's almost like, I know exactly what you're going to do. You're keeping Shabbat. You're going to take it home. And you're gonna call me after Shabbat. There's not even a question that you're going to steal my car. Because we have the same values. I know the values that you live by. Okay, so it says that Kol Yisrael arevim zeh bazeh, especially within our own people, there's a certain element of trust. And we are all intertwined with each other. They say it's like somebody who's on a boat. And he's in his own little, whatever you call it, room. How do you call a room in a boat? What? Room? What do they call it? Cabin, yeah. He's in his own cabin. I knew there was another word. The professor at the back. So he's in his own cabin and he starts drilling a hole in his cabin. And he says, what are you doing? Huh?
Which direction?
Outwards. And the water, he's at the bottom floor. Well, he's at the bottom floor and I guess
Depends
where he is. Okay, downwards. He's drilling a hole downwards on his boat. In his room. You hear the noise of drilling. What's going on? You go knock on his room. What are you doing? I'm drilling a hole. I want some water from the bottom. So you say to him, what do you mean? You can't do that. You can't do that. So what does he say? What does he say to you?
It's mine.
It's my room. Who cares? Are you going to tell me what to do?
Yeah.
We're all in this boat together. When I look at the world like that, then I have a different perspective, that we're all here together. Your success is my success. It doesn't hurt on my success. Then I'm able to deal with the success of others. Okay? So, just a few other points. Stuff is not happiness. Just because someone has a lot of stuff does not mean that he's happy. We've seen this world. How much stuff do we need to accumulate to realize that stuff does not mean happiness? So just because someone has a house and, that doesn't mean that I should be envious of him. Okay? And the last thing is Emunah, faith. Understanding and the belief that everyone has what they need in this world. Everyone gets what they need. You know the story of the horse? The horse, when he drinks from the water, kicks. You know that? Kicks the water. Why? Because he sees his reflection in the water. And the horse can't bear to see that someone is drinking from his water whilst he's drinking. So he kicks it. But a human being knows that there's a huge river here. And the water that you're drinking or somebody else is drinking doesn't affect the water that I can also drink. If somebody's successful, doesn't mean that I can't be. There's enough for everyone to succeed in. One person's success doesn't mean another person's loss. So Emunah is the understanding that we're all here for a reason. We're all here for a purpose. And everyone gets exactly what they need to get. And I'm happy with what I have. Okay? Okay, so the second thing he says is Yetzer Hara. I'm going to say this quickly. Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. The evil inclination. So God says that having an evil inclination was Tov Ma'od. He created the whole world. Vayar Elokim Ki Tov. God saw it was good. And then it says by Adam he saw that it was very good. Tov Me'od. He said it was very good. And the rabbis say, why does it say very good? At the end of creation, he created the whole world. God saw that it was very good. What's very good? Our rabbis say, the Midrash says, the evil inclination. When it says very good, it's the evil inclination. How come? The desire to be lazy. The desire to be angry. Hey, don't use this next time. Okay, but this is what it says. The desire to be angry. The desire to be jealous. The desire for hatred. Envy. All the things we're talking about. God saw that and said it's very good. How come? How can it be very good?
Because it makes us human.
It makes us human. Think about this. Imagine we came into this world without any inclination to do bad. We'll come in and leave exactly the same.
Nothing will change.
Nothing will be changed. We wouldn't have had a stepping stone for growth. So why was it good? Our rabbis explain, the Midrash explain. If somebody is able to overcome their inclination and use it for the better, then it's very good. And even those that don't, but as an overall thing, God saw, because by God there's no past, present, and future, everything's one. He saw that it was good. What does it mean? He saw it's very good. Because if we're able to channel our energy, which is what we were talking about, in the right way, it comes very good. So for instance, jealousy. That's not something you should have. But that energy could be channeled for good. How? It says, Kinat Sofrim Tarbeh Chochmah. The jealousy of those that are studious makes us wise. You see someone doing good, someone studying, giving charity. He says, oh, he gave, I also need to give. Right? The charity campaigns online. Everyone's watching. He gave $100. That one. We get influenced by what other people do. So sometimes jealousy of the good that others do helps us. We could channel anger. Do you know what anger's to do with? Anger's to do with emotions, feeling. If you feel for things, you can feel about things a lot. You care about something a lot. You can get angry when it doesn't work out for you, right? Because you care. So anger is to do with actually to do with someone who has a lot of fire in him, a lot of care. But use that for something else. Use that energy of caring for something else, and you can. So there's many things. Every single bad trait. It says in the Talmud, Barati Yetzer Hara, Barati Lo Torah Tavlin. I created the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, the inclination to do wrong. But I also created next to it the Torah as a spice. Why is it a spice? If you take a pot of food, soup, and you fill it with water and vegetables, and you cook it, what happens to the soup? It tastes all right, but you don't have salt. You need a bit of flavor. What does spice do? It doesn't change the food. It just gives that little flavor. You got all the stuff in there, but the spice gives the flavor. That's what makes it all beautiful. That's how we should look at ourselves also. You were saying about suppressing. There are certain feelings that we have. We're not meant to suppress them. What we're meant to do is channel them for the better. Whether it's anger, jealousy. So that's how we deal with our evil inclination. But the evil inclination can take us out of this world. Desires can make us chase things for days on end and make us stressed about things for months on end. But it can hurt us eventually. Okay, somebody has a desire for food. You can channel that. Help people that need to eat. Right, that's just an example.
They need their food?
Huh?
They need their food?
Well, make food for them.
That's kind of dangerous though. Anyway.
It says that if somebody has a desire for blood, yes, you should either work with meat or surgery in a hospital. Become a doctor.
So you can get more blood of them?
That's that is exactly where you would think the opposite of what Judaism says. Judaism says no. Don't suppress that feeling. Because if you're able to channel a person in the right way from a young age, you see that that's where their energy is. If you're able to channel that energy in the right way, it can be used for tremendously good things.
You should go to the army.
Yeah, that could be a good option. Yeah. Yes.
We've discussed, acceptance and using kind of these evil inclinations to channel into something good. What if the inclination is to do something awful and terrible?
Give me an example, because that inclination can be used for good.
People who are literal psychopaths and diagnosed as that. I'm serious.
No, I was thinking, I was
There
going
are
to ask
people
the
who are
same
diagnosed, or people who have narcissistic personality disorder, or people who are people who are.
I don't think narcissists are that. I mean, I shouldn't say that. They are bad, but like psychopaths are worse.
I wasn't saying they're the exact same. Let's make sure that but like people who genuinely have inclinations to do harm and to do bad and are physically unable or mentally unable to do good because that is literally how they're wired genetically.
Okay, so this is where that last word that you said is where we would differ.
What was the last word?
That you said that they are wired genetically. They are wired genetically to be inclined this way. And we believe. Now, there may be very rarely somebody that's wired genetically to be from day one dangerous. At birth, they found their knife and they're like, hey, that might happen. But
Oddly specific, Rabbi.
Yeah, sorry.
Oddly.
Excuse me. I'll cut that out from the video. But
I have a lot of follow-up questions now.
what I'm trying to say is that what was your name again?
Ryan.
Ryan just said Putin, for example. Okay, everyone's calling him a psychopath. That man is very skilled. He is a black belt, or whatever it is, in judo. Yeah, it's all fake news. He fights a bear. He's a musician. He's actually a musician. He's extremely smart. He speaks English very well, even though he always gets a translator to make sure he speaks Russian. He is extremely learned. He's a very smart man. When you look at him and see what he's doing, you could say, psychopath. It's true. After what he's doing, he's channeling his energy in the bad way. But I believe that if at a young age, there is a certain point where someone becomes so engrossed. It says that when someone does something wrong and repeats it, it comes normal for him. It says someone does an avera, v'asapo v'chazarbo, and does it again, naselo ke'eter, it comes now allowed. It's like, it's good to do it. When someone does bad multiple times, they start not only justifying it, but they actually say it's a good thing. So I believe that that's something that's built on. It's not that they become that way from day one, but it's the environment, it could be. It could be many, many aspects that cause, and the proof is in the pudding. Look at the history and the surrounding of that person's upbringing, and you'll see around the upbringing there was always some kind of trauma or some kind of experience that caused that person to get into that situation. It wasn't that they were born that way. Almost every time. It was, you look at serial killers, and or don't, but you look at stories of serial killers and all these types of people, you'll see that there's a repetitive behavior in all of them, and it's a lot to do with also their upbringing and surrounding. So if someone was able to channel that energy in a correct path, as opposed to having them playing Fortnite for hours on end, just an example. And then eventually it leads to Halo. That's already 20 years ago. But still going? And then it leads to the next game, and then it leads to real guns, The question is, what are we channeling our children from a young age with, which leads them to this environment? Yeah.
So you mentioned, the maybe 0.1% of people that are hardwired from day one. Maybe there's the one toddler that decides to just,
right.
do that. But if we're all made b'tselem Elohim, then why did Hashem create those people?
Okay, so that's another question, which is the idea of why is it that we have people that are with certain disabilities, some mentally and some physically. In Jewish teaching, just in a nutshell, that's from the concept of Gilgul, which means that that person already did in a previous lifetime almost everything that they needed to do.
Oh, really?
And there's just one small thing that they need to come back to the world and do. And in order to minimize their free will, they are narrowed down to a certain position where they can't do that much, or their mind is not able to actually choose that much because of their disability. Okay, and according to us, we actually respect those types of people. They are very holy souls. There are rabbis that would stand for them. The Chazon Ish in Israel would stand when a impaired person will come into his room. He would stand up for him and show tremendous respect for someone that was physically impaired. And the reason is because we believe that that person came back. Everyone, by the way, in our generation is a reincarnation. According to us, everyone's had a previous life at some point. We all come back into this world to fix something that we did or we need to do. And those that are impaired, their free will is much more narrowed down because they don't have much choice. They just have to do certain things to fill their purpose in this world. And some of them come back, whether it's mentally or physically. But some people are mentally unstable and they need to be closed up or watched over. In Hebrew, it would be called a shoteh. Not in a bad way. In the Talmudical terms, there are people that are cheresh, shoteh, v'katan. A katan is a young child that's not even aware of what he's doing yet. A shoteh is someone who's physically impaired and is unable to communicate his own expressions and feelings. Right? Is somewhat intoxicated. He's not in his own world, element. And by the way, when someone does something, like you were saying, someone not physically impaired, but mentally impaired, where they're dangerous and they're genetically born that way, then they too need to be watched over. There needs to be someone that looks after and makes sure they are not liable. According to Jewish law, you can't take them to prison because they are not liable for the wrong that they do. The tzibur, the congregation, needs to watch over such a person, and we as a whole are liable for that person. But that person himself is not liable if he goes and does some damage. You can't take, and that we do that in modern day court too.
Criminally or civilly?
Criminally.
Okay. Criminally correct.
Right.
Civilly it's a little bit
Okay, so that's how we look at it also. We don't consider that person as a criminal. Okay. The last thing we said makes sense, by the way. Yetzer hara takes a person out of this world, inclination to do bad. If we don't channel it for the right way. Last thing is hatred for people. How do we fix hatred for people? Was the last thing that we said. Takes us out of this world. It's kind of similar to having a bad eye, but it's the general feeling of animosity, hatred to others. How do we fix it? And why does it happen? Sinat chinam, hatred. Why does it happen? Because someone does something wrong to me. And I can't get rid of that pain. Question, how do we get... You have to understand, hatred is never for, or at least we think that hatred is never for no reason. I have good reasons to hate. But why does it happen? Someone called me, I'm driving down the road, and someone called me, hey, slow down. And I get annoyed with him. Okay, let's say. I get annoyed with him for screaming at me to slow down. So I have a good reason. He shouted at me in public, I'm here. Well, okay, whatever. I went 30 miles an hour in the 10-mile zone. Whatever. Calm down. And he's screaming at me. So I felt embarrassed and I start feeling hatred towards that person. So what do? How do I fix that? Hatred is always that I think in my mind, I have a good reason for this hate. If you ask anybody that has hatred, why do you hate that person so much? He'll tell you, I hate him because this, that, and the other, and he needs to be hated. He's evil. He'll give you all the reasons. Hatred always seems to be that the person that hates has a good reason for it. But why do we hate?
Well,
Because we're hurt.
Okay, we're hurt because we want revenge. Look, I want to tell you that most of our hatred comes because we don't speak it out. Interesting. This is Maimonides, who, by the way, went through a lot of hatred in his lifetime. A lot of love too. During the life of Maimonides, the Yemenite community, the whole community would add his name into Kaddish. They would add his name. Rav Moshe Bele'ela min kol bechata v'shirata, they'd add Yitparach v'yishtabach v'yitpan, they'd add his name into it. Rav Moshe ben Maimon, they loved him so much. He had a lot of followers, but he had a lot of haters also, people that were jealous of him in his lifetime. And he says like this, if you hate in your heart, you are transgressing a mitzvah in the Torah, which says, Lo tisnai et achicha bilvavecha, don't hate your brother in your heart, which is very interesting, because it's, how can you define that? It's a feeling that we're told not to have. It's one of the only places where we're told to remove an internal feeling. Lo tisnai et achicha bilvavecha, it's a commandment. Don't have hate in your heart. How can you control my heart? But it's a commandment.
Maybe the commandment only talks about your actual brother and not necessarily...
But it's one of the 613 mitzvot. It's very hard to define. Okay, we're going to finish right now. And it says you can't enforce such a thing because it's a feeling. But, and the Torah says that this is specifically about hatred in your heart. If you hit someone, that's another law. But hatred is a separate one that you have not to have hatred in your heart. Don't allow it to get into your heart. How do you fix that? When somebody does wrong to you, don't hold it in and keep quiet. Like we see with Avshalom and Amnon. Avshalom hated Amnon and killed him. And how did he hate him? He didn't speak to him. He kept it quiet for months on end. It's that quiet neighbor. And he bottled it in. And eventually that's what happened. So what's the mitzvah? Part of the mitzvah of not hating someone is to tell him, why did you do that to me? You should know in a nice way. By the way, that really hurt my feelings. And most times, by the way, if someone hurts your feelings and you go up to them and you say, I know you didn't mean this, but it really hurt me. And that person will say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I never thought it would. You can solve so many problems by just going over to the person and say, it hurt my feelings. That hurt me. And it can solve tremendous issues, and mainly can solve the hate that's in your heart, which can eat you alive and make you old, like we say. Okay? So you could say to him, Lama chatatali b'davar ploni, why did you hurt me in such and such a way? As it says that there's another mitzvah in Judaism, hocheach tochiach et amitecha, that we should rebuke our friends if they do wrong. In a nice way. Not make him hate, but do it in a friendly, in a private manner, where he's not in front of other people. And you'll see that both he will forgive you, he would ask you for forgiveness, he'll say sorry, and you'll be able to remove it completely from your heart, and you will be able to forgive. He says also, a person that forgives should not be cruel. and say, right, the person that's asking you, please, I'm sorry. No, that's it, I'm done. I'm not going to forgive you. Once a person asks you for forgiveness, you're told that you should forgive them, even the worst person. If they come to you and they sincerely ask you forgiveness, we should be a forgiving people and forgive them. Okay, so those are the 3 things that takes a person out of this world in a spiritual sense. What are they? Ayin Ra, looking at people in the wrong way. Yetzara, evil inclinations, not channeling my inclinations in the right way. Not dealing with my inclinations and channeling them for the good, like my jealousy, my hatred, my anger. You can channel all of those things. That's why in Hebrew, by the way, your personality is called a midah. Your character in Hebrew is called midah, which means measure. Because your character needs to be taken into measure, whether good or bad. And lastly, hatred for other people is something that we want to avoid. And how do we avoid it? By speaking it out. If you have any hatred or animosity, someone hurt you, they hurt your feeling, you can go over to them and speak to them in a private way, in a respectful manner, and normally they will forgive you. Before we finish, Izzy, you had a question?
Yeah, I thought it was they have to come to you for forgiveness 3 times, and on the 3rd time you have to forgive.
No, if they come to you, the person that's asking for forgiveness, when he hears the person say no, he needs to go again and ask forgiveness 3 times.
Right.
The person that's asking for forgiveness, but the person that's being asked, he needs to forgive straight away. If he sees that the question is sincere, he should forgive straight away. Okay? If somebody doesn't forgive after 3 times, he's considered cruel at that point. Okay? But in general, the person that's asking for forgiveness, he needs to know. I should ask for forgiveness 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. After that, okay, it's his problem now. It's not my problem. I asked already 3 times. But the person that's asked to be forgiven, the forgiver, he should be forgiving straight away at least. Try at least to be forgiving the first time. By the way, if he passes away, someone hurts you and they pass away. Also, you shouldn't have hate in your heart. What do? You take a minyan and you go to the burial site and you ask him forgiveness there as well. And because at that point he's with just a soul, we are convinced that he's going to forgive you for sure straight away. Yes?
Is it an absolute thing that if a person comes to you and asks for forgiveness, you need to forgive him?
It's not absolute. In a case where
I was thinking, for example,
it's not sincere.
If the other filter will come up somehow to me and ask forgiveness, or not just to me, to any other Jew, ask forgiveness for killing his family.
Of course not. But
Yeah.
it's not sincere.
Say he was sincere. Say he took the right pill that made him right in his mind. Realized he said,
So then it was the pill.
You know what? That wasn't me. I was just crazy earlier, or something like that.
We have that question is unrealistic, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah, but it's the extreme to prove a point. I mean, I'm sure there are other situations. But
There are situations where a human being can find it impossible to forgive, but God will forgive. For instance, taking someone's life, so the family member can never forgive that. It could be situations where that could be very, very hard to forgive. God can forgive. But as a whole, the objective should be to forgive. If that person is sincere, and you know that person is sincere, let's say he sat in prison for 20 years, and he really is sincere, then for your benefit, the goal isn't that I should be right. The goal is that this world should be a better place, that we leave this world as a better place. Okay, and if that person asks me, and he really hurt me in any way, in an ideal world, you're meant to forgive. But if he's sincere, there's times where you're not meant to forgive.
Okay, good. That's all.
When he's not sincere. Okay, when he's not changed. When he's not changed his path.
So it's necessary that it will be sincere about it, and it also he has changed.
That is an indication of sincerity.
Because the second one, going back to what you said earlier, that he said 20 years in prison. Let's assume he did not sit 20 years in prison yet. he came to you, said, I stole from you that $2 million that caused you not being able to pay your medicines or whatever it is,
Did he pay you back?
and he burned it on drugs and whatever it is, then he comes back to you and he doesn't want you to snitch on him because you will go to jail, and he's like, I'm asking forgiveness.
That's a theft, and he needs to pay that money back. He needs to do teshuvah on that theft.
Until then, you cannot forgive.
Yes.
You don't have-
You're not required to forgive him.
Okay, good.
You have to understand, everything's very clear.
I want to know.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
If he's improved, and he's proven it, and he's given the money back, then he's accepted, then you can forgive him. Yeah.
I was going to ask you.
By the way, we finished, so no.
We are finished.
Thank you.